Hey everybody, so I'm back with another solo new Bat Chat adventure, which is what Eric's been calling them, and I kind of like the name. This time, we're going to talk about something that's kind of spinning off of the writing Bruce Wayne thing, which kind of spun off of the I'm Batman problem video. This time we're talking about writing Jason Todd. If you don't know already, I guess I'll explain everything here. I'm not a Jason Todd fan. I think Jason Todd is a horrible character. I think he's been completely mishandled for most of his history. I think there's only been about one, maybe two good stories with that character. Three, if you really stretch it and you start looking outside of comics. I think he's a character whose popularity rests on a fundamental misconception of what he actually is. And I just have numerous problems with that character on a premise level, and a numerous problems with how he relates to the rest of the Bat family. And Grant Morrison did this well. Grant Morrison's the guy that I think is the standard for how Jason Todd should be handled, but we'll get into that. So writing Jason Todd, I think I mentioned this in the previous couple videos. If not there, I mentioned it somewhere else, I'm sure. Back on my channel, I did a video with John and my friend Alex, superhero enthusiast, about our DC universe. And in that video, I talked about my pitch for Batman and my issues with Batman as a character, what I would change, what I would make him realize, how I would mold Batman from what he is in the comics now to what I pitched in my Writing Batman video. Central to a lot of those themes is Jason Todd. Jason Todd is a character I don't like at all, but he's a character I really want to write, and he is a character I've actually written comics about before. I actually have my own little headcanon of stories of what Batman's years with Jason Todd were really like and the issues I want to deal with that character. So a lot of my writing Jason Todd experience or information is going to come from things I've already written that I haven't really had a chance to address anywhere else. So, Jason Todd. Jason Todd has a pretty annoying history post-crisis and pre-crisis because so much of it doesn't matter, but then other parts of it do, and it's really hard to tell what writer is informing him where and who rewrote what. There's stories about the post-crisis writer for Jason Todd apparently had a whole bunch of his scripts rewritten by Dennis O'Neil, and there's a whole bunch of issues with Jason Todd not really being the focus, and then other times he is the focus, but he's out of character, and then his out of characterness is what stuck as his character. It's a really big jumbled mess of Jason Todd stuff. Pre-crisis Jason Todd is just a Dick Grayson clone. That's all there is to him. He's just a Dick Grayson clone. There's nothing more to say than he was a Dick Grayson clone. After that, we had the post-crisis Jason, who was a street kid. Who's a kid living on his own, with Batman finding him. He sent him to like an all-boys school for a little while. He was trying to set him on the straight and narrow. He was living in Crime Alley. The Second Chances trade actually collects all of this early Jason Todd post-crisis stuff, and most of that trade's actually pretty awful, but there's a couple of interesting highlights here and there. What's immediately interesting about Jason Todd and Batman's relationship is that it highlights a massive problem with Batman's approach to solving crime. It highlights a massive problem with Batman as a person, and it highlights lots of interesting ethical issues that don't get explored in superhero comics nearly enough. And it's very simple to write Jason Todd well, keep his origins intact, and tell a really unique Batman story, and to really grow that character outside of the bubble he's been in ever since Jason was created. The first thing about Jason is Jason's an extremely tortured character. There's that ambiguous issue as to where we don't really know, but he may have killed someone. The book is written with very clearly the intention of Jason killed this dude. And then after that, we had Death of the Family, and we do this whole Jason's going over the edge thing, and Jason's a much more tortured character than... Well, he's not the most tortured Robin anymore, I guess. Damian kind of sticks up there. If you add all of Tim Drake's history together, I don't think Jason is quite as bad off as Tim Drake has been, although that's debatable. It's really a perspective thing, because Jason didn't have anyone to begin with and just kind of became accustomed to living on his own. Tim Drake had a lot and lost everything, so ultimately what's worse? Jason has a really dark history, but The big difference is that Jason was dark when he became Robin. Jason had gone through some of the most horrible things he would ever face before he was Robin. When he became Robin, it just started becoming more evident that his origins were making him unstable in the present. The thing with Jason Todd is that as a Robin, he should be the lesson to Bruce that why Robin matters, what kind of Robin matters, and why Batman matters. And this is all vague stuff, but I promise I'll explain this in more detail. Robin being as tortured, or if not more tortured than Batman, is automatically a risky concept, because the whole point of Tim Drake, the whole point of Damian, the whole point of Dick Grayson is to create a character that mellows Batman out, that helps him deal with the darker things. So if Jason is just as tortured and he can't come to terms with it, then he's not really helping Batman. And so in that way, the books can't pretend like he is. And that's a lot of the problems I have with Jason as Robin. Even after he changed his origins, they were still writing him like he was Dick Grayson. They kept writing him as if, just by default, because he's Robin, Batman's more chipper. And that's not really how it would work if Jason is not the same kind of personality. If Jason is angrier, if Jason is a character that has a lot more resentment, then he's not going to mellow Batman out. He's going to stress him out more, and that became more clear towards his death, but not nearly clear enough. The other thing is, it highlights the issue that Batman's a really bad father. Batman is a character that you look up to in certain aspects, but you really shouldn't in other aspects. Batman's a character that doesn't understand parental relationships, and it's never made explicit in any of the comics I've read, but I think it's always been there. If you look at the way Bruce expects his children to grow up, if you look at the double standard he sets out for Damian and for Huntress, if you look at the way Batman treats his Robins as opposed to the way Thomas Wayne treated him, there's no fatherhood there. There's a good moment in, I think it's Endgame. If it's not Endgame, it's Death of the Family. It's one of the two Snyder stories where, or actually it might have been Batman Eternal now that I'm thinking about it, because I think I was talking with Alex about it. There's a great moment in one of those later Snyder New 52 Batman comics where Dick Grayson mentions that Alfred was the guy that the Robins used to go to for advice, for going on a date, or what to do in school, or growing up, or becoming adolescent. The fact was that Alfred was the father figure not only for Bruce but for the Robins. That he's the guy that really cared about those things, and Bruce never did. Bruce's whole father philosophy comes down to dealing with your pain, but it's never more than that. It's never overcoming. It's never human experience. It's never becoming more outside your costume, and eventually that leads to rifts between the other characters, but it's never directly addressed that Bruce Wayne's a really bad dad. Bruce Wayne is not a person who's capable of being the kind of father Thomas was to him. That's part of why I love the Deadshot parallel so much, and I might make a separate video about Batman and Deadshot, because I don't want to get into all of that here. Bruce Wayne's a character that needs to be put in a position where he realizes he's not doing these kids as much good as he thinks he is. The other thing is, if Jason was 1 year older, would he have been Robin? Because Batman's whole thing is basically just beating up, down on their luck, homeless, mentally unstable people, and calling it justice. Now, naturally, criminals are criminals, right? If someone's trying to mug you and Batman comes and stops them, it doesn't make Batman the bad guy. However, Batman fighting these criminals symbolically, it doesn't work as well as it ought to. Batman in the 70s had a thing where he was more concerned with the socioeconomic status of people. He was more concerned with making Gotham a better place, creating better infrastructure, helping people get off the street, helping the mentally unstable, going to the root of this problem as opposed to simply just beating criminals up. But if Jason was 1 year older, then why would Bruce have thought twice about not kicking the crap out of him and just sending him to jail? What was it about Jason that made him take him in as opposed to just sending him away? And that's not really explored. So part of what I would do with a Batman Jason Todd story is, one, highlight the fact that Batman doesn't have a hard and fast rule for how he handles criminals, particularly more street level criminals. That him bringing Jason in is more of his emotional weakness than it is any sort of like destiny or high-strung philosophy. That Bruce is just trying to wing things the best he can, and he's trying not to be emotional, but at the same time he can be. That Batman's problem of just beating up criminals doesn't solve everything, and sometimes he recognizes that, and that's what Jason would be. Jason would be one of his first attempts to try and reform people as opposed to just quieting the riots and the madness. The second lesson then would be that in Jason, in this rebellious kid, you have to have Bruce understand that the closer he tries to get to him, the worse off both of them are. That Batman and Bruce Wayne don't really know how to raise a child, that they don't really understand the emotional nuances, the experiences, the fulfilling life, because they never had that. That Bruce never grew up going to high school and, he went to school, but he never went to high school with the mindset of, I need to pass this test, or I want to go out with this girl, or I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. Like, I mentioned this in the Writing Batman video, that Batman's life was completely planned out for him, whether he thought of it that way or not. And the Robins wouldn't have that. Just by necessity, just by the fact that Bruce Wayne adopts them, they wouldn't have that. And Bruce wouldn't know how to handle that. Bruce wouldn't know, because he never went through it. He never had those more angsty moments. He had angst, he just had a different kind of angst. He didn't have the same sort of teenage angst that these kids would. So again, Jason would be highlighting the fundamental disconnect between Batman's childhood experience and his. And it's sort of more of like a Teen Titans thing at that point, where it's an old versus young sort of motif. The next thing would be that in killing Jason, it wouldn't be this big traumatic blow to it's always my fault, it's that he was my soldier and he died. It would be that Batman failed to understand Jason. That Batman failed to get to the root of that humanity. That Jason represented Batman's chance to reconnect with people by allowing Jason to change. And that never worked. And part of the lesson would be that that's the wrong method. That Bruce Wayne shouldn't have tried to force an identity onto Jason by making him Robin, by taking him out of his social confines and acting as if just throwing him into a mansion makes the problem better. Bruce Wayne would have to realize that Jason is who he is because of the circumstances he grew up in. And forcing that identity out rather than accepting it and helping him deal with it is a lot worse. That Jason was never allowed to be who he wanted to be. Jason is the ultimate metaphor for the social construct of identity. And Bruce would have to deal with that because he's the exact same thing, and just trying to uproot who Jason was wouldn't work. And when that's the case, when that's the case and Jason dies, it's more of an emotional blow because Bruce Wayne failed to be the one thing that he lacked. He failed to be his father. He failed to be his mother. He failed to be Alfred. It wouldn't be about the soldier. It wouldn't be about the war. It would be about the death of innocence. Very literally, the death of innocence, because that's what Jason would have represented to him. I've said this before. I think Jason is the ultimate I just need a hug character. I think Jason is one of those people that put on airs and kept forcing himself to be a different person, was constantly forced to be a different person by other people as well, that he never really got the chance to understand who he is outside of that. And all Jason ever really needed to become a better person was for someone to just accept that. For someone to just say that, look, you grew up on the streets, you're tougher than most kids, you've been through hell, I understand, let's talk about it. And not try to make him Robin, and not try to force him to deal with his pain in a completely different direction. Just accept Jason for who he is and move him forward, and Batman would be unable to do that, and that's why Jason dies. And then there's the resurrection thing. Because the resurrection of Jason is not something I'm a fan of. I don't think that should have happened. At the same time, there are moments of brilliance in the post-Red Hood Batman days. Particularly with what Grant Morrison did. Because what Grant Morrison did was that he made Jason symbolize the social media propaganda. The fact that Jason was the social construct gone wrong, and then he became the tool of social interaction as the new Red Hood with Grant Morrison's run, I think is a brilliant connection. And then the point would be because Jason is that social construct, because Jason is that perfect personification of what society turns us into, he would be either Tim Drake or Dick Grayson's Joker. That's what Morrison did with him. He made him Dick Grayson's Joker. I would probably make him Tim Drake's Joker just because I like Tim Drake more, and plus Dick Grayson's already got Deathstroke. I think Deathstroke's a better parallel anyway. Which I will probably do a video on eventually as well, because I think that's an interesting relationship. Jason as the Joker for Tim Drake then would be kind of like the second generation of that idea. He wouldn't be about chaos, he would be about order. But he wouldn't be about order in the sense that everything needs to be in a system. He would be about order in the sense that no one can ever be who they really are because everyone is forced to be someone else. And it's not just that you have one bad day, it's that your one bad day was someone else's fault, and because you experienced that one bad day, you're going to hurt someone else. That there is this endless, vicious cycle of choices that are both open and close to you because of the way society functions, and that drives him mad. And he has that revelation before Batman does, and that's why he can't be with Batman. That's where the rift comes in, is that Jason realizes that Bruce never understood him before Bruce realizes he never understood him. I think I always like this idea of the Joker being ahead of the curve to Batman, and having the Joker be ahead of the curve, or having Red Hood be ahead of the curve, would just make that work a little bit more. And I think it'd be better for Tim Drake, because Tim Drake is the second generation Batman. Tim Drake is let's take everything about Bruce that works and everything about Bruce that doesn't work, and let's channel it into someone younger, and let's channel it into someone that can see those faults and those pros more objectively. That Tim Drake is the more logical thinker. Tim Drake is not someone that wants to fight first. Tim Drake is someone that didn't go through hell in order to become a good person, but because he's a good person, he went through hell, and so he understands loss in a different way. He understands loss from a place of goodness before he understands it from a place of tragedy. And so he's kind of the ultimate mature. He's kind of the ultimate mature Batman. And then having him be more pure in that way, having him be his own self before anything bad happens to him, and having Jason be all about everything coming at him and everything being socially defined, makes those two opposites work just as well as Joker and Batman work. And so Tim and Jason would be kind of the perfect fallen sons. It would be the perfect sort of mythological two brothers going at each other idea. And I think it's just as natural, I think it's just as fascinating as anything with Batman and the Joker. Jason's a character with a lot of potential. Jason's a character that is being transformed into this weird DC Punisher kind of thing, and I don't think that works. I think Jason being Jason as a tool to explore why Batman doesn't kill isn't anywhere near as interesting as what you could really do with him, because simply making it about the no-kill rule ignores the more human toll of what that does. I mean, because that rule has to come from a certain psychological place. It has to come from a certain level of weight. Bruce Wayne has to be psychologically fractured to a very certain degree if he's going to try and uphold that under all circumstances. And because he tries to uphold that under all circumstances, Jason dies. And because of that, Jason has been dehumanized by Bruce's love of humanity. And from that perspective, you have to make it about humanity. You have to make it about spheres of experience. You have to make it more on a practical level as opposed to a normative level. And Jason combating Batman on a normative level, like, why didn't you just kill the Joker, seems like even he forgot why the problems with his relationship with Batman and why he ended up dying. Because Jason's whole death comes from emotion. Jason's death comes from him trying to track down his mom. It comes from innocence. It comes from human experience before it comes from logic and reasoning. And to transform him into that with Red Hood, I don't think works as well as just making him human, making him the most human of the Bat family. This is clearly I didn't say much about like how I make Jason's personality work like I do with Bruce Wayne, but that's kind of what I would want the dynamic between Jason Todd and Bruce Wayne and Tim Drake to be. I'd want him to be the ultimate human. I'd want him to be the ultimate statement of, look at what goodness and badness does to a person. Look at what society does to a person. Jean-Paul Sartre in No Exit has that great line, hell is other people. And what he means by that is we can be anything we want to be, or we're capable of being anything we want to be, but because of society and because of the way things are structured and because we are thrown into the world with certain situations beyond our control, we can never quite attain that. And so we're sent through hell through other people because of that, because we aren't perfectly free despite our ability to be perfectly free. Society makes it so that it can't work that way. And Jason would be that personified. Jason would be the person that could have been anything, and because of society he wasn't able to be anything. And Bruce just perpetuates that problem while Jason's trying to make him realize that. And Tim Drake would be the more seasoned version of the character that's able to address that more directly and in a way that Bruce never was able to. Especially if we're talking about how Bruce Wayne's written in the comics now. That the Bruce Wayne that's more about the logic, the Bruce Wayne that's more about the stoicism, that Bruce Wayne wouldn't be able to deal with Jason on that level, and that's why you need to bring Tim Drake in. This wasn't as clear as I think my other writing Bruce Wayne video was. This is really just kind of scattershot, pitching the ideas I have in my head right now. So let me know what you guys think in the comments, whether you agree or disagree with anything I said. What do you think of Jason Todd? How would you write that character? Do you have a favorite story with him that isn't under the hood? That is something outside of that? Because mine is still the Batman and Robin story arc where he shows up. Thanks everybody for watching, and I'll see you next time with another video.